I found a stat, and a good stat, that Louisville leads the nation in. And that stat is blocked kicks. We're technically tied with Notre Dame with 6 blocked kicks, which is top of the country. But Notre Dame, you got to play more games than us, so we beat you on average. Suck it, nerds. We get this win. Let us have this. Hello, and welcome to From the Pink Seats podcast here on the State of Louisville Podcast Network. Hosted tonight, I'm producer Keith. With me, as always, Matt McGavick, Vincent Lococo. Thank you all again for tuning in to our off-season in review series. I probably got the technical name wrong. Jacob, please don't beat me with a wet pool noodle. But today, we're talking about little skill. The little guys, the fast guys, the pretty boys that make the play. But before that, there's a few things we got to dive into. First off, I mean, we brought in the show last time on the Luka Doncic trade, and Anthony Davis already injured.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
Yeah.
If he
it sucks to be a Mavs fan.
If he didn't go to a certain school, I'd almost feel bad for him.
Drink some milk.
But no, while we're starting shows with transactions. Alex Bregman to the Red Sox. Vince, hater time. Go.
Nah, I'm not going to be a hater tonight. We'll save that for. I think there will be enough hating in this show, so we're gonna bite tongues.
I'm trying not to say and get any hope going right now, just because, as a Reds fan, you're used to just getting kicked in the balls every August, knowing that, like, hey, the team looked good in spurts. We could make a playoff run. Oh no, we're shitting down our leg again.
Well, this is your annual, like, Yankees sign X, Y, and Z from free agency, pitchers, catchers report, and the only thing you see on social media, because this is the only thing we can talk about right now, is everybody complaining about the facial hair rule, and it's like,
yep,
it's awful.
Get over it. We're the fucking Yankees. That's why you're a Reds fan, and that's why we're the Yankees. That's why you're the Reds, and that's why we're the Yankees.
Hey, what happened to Samson when they made him cut his hair, huh?
I thought it was
27 World Series.
I thought it was the hundreds of millions of dollars in payroll difference, but I guess I'm just a silly man. But anyway, again, this is From the Pig Seats podcast. You wouldn't know it by our content so far, but we talk about Louisville football. We're the only podcast dedicated year-round coverage exclusively to University of Louisville football, with the occasional veer to wherever our brains take us. If you haven't already, get down there. If you're on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. Hop in the comments. Give us your thoughts. NBA injury on the MLB side.
Give us your thought on Matt McGavick rolling his ankle in his sleep. Before we get going on Louisville football.
I knew it was coming.
mean, Jesus. What happened there, bud?
I don't know. I don't know what I did. I didn't do anything the night before. I don't think my dog, sat on my foot. Maynard is a wild boy, so maybe he did. I don't know. I don't sleepwalk. Otherwise, I would know, because my dog has to be attached to my hip every time I'm walking in another room. I just wake up and I'm like, my foot kind of hurts. That's weird. I go to get out of bed and stand up. And I'm like, oh, I can't put any weight on my foot right now.
And so weird.
The weird. You know what's really weird, Keith? This isn't the first time this has happened.
Oh my god.
This is the second time. I did it a couple years ago, and then legit the next morning, the day after it happened, it was fine. So I'm hoping that's what happens again.
Oh my god. Well, I shared the story of Gary McCray in our group text message. I guess I can tell this now, since he's not a student athlete, but he dislocated his shoulder in his sleep, but he had already tore his rotator cuff. So what I'm gathering from this, Matt, with you doing it numerous times, is you probably have some sort of a internal ankle injury, foot injury of some sort that you just never, you powered through because you're a tough guy. We'll call it that. You just toughed it out, gritted it out, and kept it moving.
I was going to go the polar opposite way. I was just going to call him soft.
I was trying to keep his hopes up, man. I'm trying to build him up.
I tell you what, walking Maynard with a bum ankle was not fun. Just him yanking the entire time. I'm like trying to keep myself up and not fall over because I'm like basically peg legging around the block.
Yeah, I think that means you're old. I think that officially means you're just old. Have you tried? Did you try WD-40?
No,
but I did take my Flintstone gummy.
Oh, there you go.
So you're basically a superhero. So let's go ahead and shift things around. Well, you know what? I got this transition. Speaking of superheroes, we had a lot of high expectations for some players coming back into this 2024 Louisville season, one of which was Quincy Riley, someone who we thought of as a superhero in that 2023 campaign with what he was able to do on the defensive side of the ball. So we're talking little skill today. So wide receivers, D-backs. That's what we're covering. And you know what? Jacob, he likes to start on the offensive side of the ball. We're in Keith's house tonight. We're going to start on defense. Defense.
Yeah.
We can see who is cheering for Philly in the Super Bowl.
Everyone.
So we're starting on a positive note on this episode, right, Keith? Right, Keith?
You know what? It was a season where we had very, very, very lofty expectations. You had guys like Tamarion McDonald coming in. You had Quincy Riley coming back. And, I don't think it's unreasonable to say we thought our secondary was going to be stacked.
Yeah.
We had Taz Nicholson. We had MJ Griffin back there, T-Mac, Corey Thornton. It was a damn solid unit on paper. And then we got to play in games and things just didn't look right. And we talked about some of the defensive struggles that we've had throughout the year. On the defensive episode, we talked about how we were generating pressures but weren't necessarily getting home. On the linebackers episode, we talked about the frustration sometimes in the passing game about leaving the middle of the field open and getting gashed. And those frustrations also carried over into the secondary. Vince, what were your thoughts as the year went on?
It was fresh out like a lot of the defense. And like we've talked about this entire time, things got better once we simplified things. And it was just frustrating early on with the guys seeing their eyes and their technique and knowing that it's not in the right spot. And, even just the naked eye being able to see, in the Notre Dame game, hey, these guys clearly had a mishap somewhere in the coverage, somewhere in the communication. Something happened here. It's not like we didn't have the talent, Keith. Like you said, we had on paper and, the guys, we thought this was going to be a really strong unit. And, for whatever reason, it just wasn't. And it seemed like, my thoughts on Quincy, I thought he had a really good year, but it seemed like those plays where he, slacked off or lacked off, those were plays where you would see guys like Catrell Clark or Jair, step up and make that play, make that one-on-one matchup play. So that was probably the most frustrating thing for me on the DB side is just having that much expectations on one kid and, he didn't fall flat. He just had a good year, instead of a great.
So, Matt, if we're asking you to do an editorial piece, what is the overall season review of the Louisville D-backs unit?
I would say that a prevailing issue with that unit is kind of pertains to really the defense as a whole, but the fact that there seems to be some sort of communication issues between the coaching staff, namely Ron English, because he's the defensive play caller, and the players on the field. I mean, all aspects of the defense kind of had this issue, and it kind of seemed like that the defensive backs group, whether it be corners or safeties, kind of had the most adverse effects when it came to some of these various communication breakdowns when you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the play call? I can't hear you. Get the play call and come on, the clock's hurry it up. We got to get this call in. Because, I mean, I'm oversimplifying it when I say it this way. I mean, if you're the D-line and, the call is just not coming in, just pin your ears back, go forward. Exactly. I mean, if you're a linebacker, you just kind of just get hot feet and monitor everything. When you're a defensive back, you don't know if you're playing man, you don't know if you're playing zone, you don't know if you're supposed to be shadowing this receiver, and whereas, the other guy next to you could be doing the same thing you're doing, and you have no idea. And it seems like that played out.
To piggyback off that, what you're trying to say is, in a cover two situation, a corner is going to have to know if it's a 2x2 offensive set, a corner and the defense is playing cover 2, he's got number 1 up until he goes past 5 yards. That's whenever the safety or whoever comes over top and starts playing the over top, or, linebacker comes over here and starts playing the curl to flat. And as number 1 passes the corner at 5 yards, his eyes immediately go to number 2, because once 1 goes past, 2's likely coming back over this way because they're trying to pull you off your spot, and that's where that honey hole that we love to talk about with offense comes in is, they'll draw a flat, the flood concept everybody loves to run. You just have to get these calls into the DBs a lot earlier so that they can have time to process what all they're going to actually have to do within the play while bullets are flying.
Yeah, it seemed like a unit that didn't have a lot of time to gel, because you would think teams would have that sort of protocol where it's like, oh shit, we didn't get a call in, let's just run our base. And on a lot of the plays where we metaphorically got caught with our pants down, no one seemed to be on the same page in coverage. And that was a reoccurring issue, not just through the initial communication issues. That went on all season. Like, we saw guys running butt naked open against in the Sun Bowl.
It's the communication within the communication of the play. It's not just us getting, hey, we're running cover 3. Like, yeah, that's great and everything. But if it's a 3-by-1 formation set, that corner on the backside who's on the 1 receiver might turn to the safety and say, hey, man, I'm locking this right here. Like, I got this guy man-to-man no matter if he's going under right now or if he's running a slant, a curl, whatever, I'm locking it. I got him man-to-man. It's like this little plays within the play that I think guys got confused on big time this year.
Yeah, almost like learning, like how a quarterback learns their receiver. I feel like it benefits to have guys in the same system over multiple years, like safeties and corners, working together to have that communication.
What do you guys think Trey Clark's doing in that situation? Trey Clark's locking that 10 times. You don't even have to look over there as a safety. You're like, oh, we have this called. Trey's locking that. I just need to make sure I'm shaded a little bit more over to this side because Trey has his guy.
I'm curious because not just Louisville, I feel like a lot of teams had more explosive plays on offense this year. If not having that continuity in this new transfer portal era is just going to cause to less effective defense to spread throughout the country, which I'm sure a lot of people who just like to see the scoreboard go burr are thrilled about.
I mean, it's just guys are going to have to be in the playbooks a lot more, and it's really going to show. I mean, it's kind of open playing field. It's the coaches being able to trust you and go out there and execute. If Antonio Harris comes in as a true freshman and can go out there and execute this stuff, then why not have him out there on the field? It doesn't matter, how old you are or whatever. If you're a transfer, if you're a freshman, if you can go out and execute it, go out and execute it.
It's just a point. It's just disappointing to see like a handful of players who have experience in the system. It's one thing if transfers are coming in and, having trouble grasping the scheme. I mean, there were veterans, I say veterans, like people who were coming back from last season who had trouble, really grasping the playbook. I mean, it wasn't just Quincy Riley. I mean, MJ Griffin, for as good as he's been, he had kind of had his moments too. D'Angelo Hutchinson, I think he had a breakout year overall, but Hutch still had his moments as well. And like I've got advanced stats later on in the episode that we can dive into that. Like it wasn't just like one person who really stood out, even though we think it is. It was really just a whole systems. I don't want to say failure because it wasn't a complete failure. A total systems issue. If I may.
You're going to get burnt on that stuff. You just have to have short-term memory as a DB. I mean, you have got to have the shortest memory on the football team next to the kicker.
So one thing I do actually want to point out as a big positive that I was pleasantly surprised by with our defensive back core, we did have issues in coverage, but in the run game, these guys tackled pretty well. Like when you're grading on a curve for defensive backs, which of course I'm grading on a pretty steep curve for defensive backs, but then like you see guys like T-Mac blowing dudes up in the backfield, making tackles for loss. No, like our defensive back, like they actually tackled and defended the run pretty damn well this year. Like Tamarian McDonald, Hutchinson, MJ Griffin, guys you mentioned, all in the top 5 for Louisville on cumulative total tackles on the season. Now, like, some people will be like, oh yeah, it's because of all the catches they were giving up. That's not entire. Well, like, that's the cynical voice saying that, and that's not entirely true. Like, they were getting up and they were making plays in the run game. I mean, shit, it seemed like any time Louisville's defense needed to create some sort of momentum, T-Mac was there blowing a dude's head, like blowing a dude up and just getting some energy and life in the game. So
my favorite is these the, like, not tunnel screens. It's not a bubble screen, just where the receiver takes one step and peels back. Whenever the DB or the corner specifically just pulls their trigger and comes screaming downhill. Now, you could get beat on like that wheel route, the stop and go that comes behind that, but whenever they pull trigger and go after it and blow up the play, I mean, there's nothing better. And NFL coaches love that stuff.
Yeah. So Keith decided to bring out the positive stats. Well, I found some things when diving into some of the advanced stats. So this season, Louisville had 7 defensive backs that played at least 100 snaps on defense. It was D'Angelo Hutchinson, Marion McDonald, MJ Griffin, Tayon Holloway, Tavion Nicholson, Corey Thornton, and Quincy Riley. So of those 7, 6 of them gave up at least 200 receiving yards as the closest defender. Now, granted, that's kind of objective because you don't know like what the actual coverage is and whose responsibility is whose. So it's not the most objective stat, but it's something. In fact, the only one who didn't give up at least 200 receiving yards was Tayon Holloway, but that's not including 3 games that he missed at the end of the regular season that we will not get into. So, of those 7, 5 had at least 7 missed tackles. So Keith's saying like, hey, they're great tackles. They're still DBs. 5 had a reception percentage allowed of over 60%, and the other 2 whose reception percentage was less surrendered the most receptions on the team, and they were Corey Thornton and Quincy Riley. 4 of them had an NFL passer rating against of 110 plus, and 2 of them, being D'Angelo Hutchinson and MJ Griffin, had an NFL passer rating against of over 150, and it maxes out at 158.3.
Yeah, suboptimal. I got another stat.
I think you're really nitpicking stats there, man. I think that's really just
I picked a much less analytical PFF focused stat.
You sure about that?
Louisville gave up 300 yards passing in 5 games. And they gave up 291 against SMU, so 9 yards away from almost half their season being 300-yard passing performances.
It's not great.
What's the interception total on the year, Matt? What was that?
Give me 30 seconds and I got you.
So
we had 10.
Yes. Quincy, Corey, Stanquan, and Taz all had 2. Then T-Mac and TJ Capers both had 1.
See, I just want more. Picks and stuff. I don't know. More explosive. I don't know.
Quincy had like a very like statistically boom or bust season, because I mean we saw with our own eyes that there were some plays where he was loafing. Now, full disclosure, he did play a chunk of the season with an ankle injury and had to miss a couple games because of it. So, but
you're over here podcasting with an ankle injury. Let's not act like he.
So yeah, he did get burnt a couple times, but he also led the ACC in pass breakups with 13. So he still made his fair amount of plays.
So while we're on pass breakups, because that's a wild one to me. Like, we had Quincy with 13. Corey Thornton was the next closest with 9. Mm-hmm. Like, it seemed like Quincy and Corey were the only ones that could really get in and break up a pass. Like, that was wild. Like, I was, as you were mentioning that, I was pulling up the passes defended national stats, because I believe when it comes to pass breakups, Louisville's in the 50s nationally on where we ranked on pass breakups. And for as much as we saw the pass this season, that just seemed staggering to me that we didn't bat more passes away.
Yeah, Louisville, I'm looking at it now, 52nd with 56. They're tied with Oklahoma State, Charlotte, USC, and Iowa State.
Yeah, that's wild to me. Well, it looks like Vince decided to hop out, get a breath of fresh air. We were getting a little too negative for him. So before I, put the positive piece of bread on the top of the critique sandwich, were there any other defensive back stats you wanted to get into, Matt?
Just a couple on Quincy Riley real quick that I kind of wanted to get into. I hate to keep piling on him, but I mean, it's a talking point, so it's got to get brought up. So, of the 249 power forward defensive backs that had at least 300 coverage snaps this season, his 446 yards allowed as the closest defender was 34th, and his 31 receptions allowed was tied for 64th. So around the top, or I guess bottom 25%.
So to put a little bit more of a positive spin on the defensive back performance, and this was one where in the show prep, I'm like, damn, we're really negative on this position group. Come on, I gotta find something. I found a stat, and a good stat, that Louisville leads the nation in. And that stat is blocked kicks. We're technically tied with Notre Dame with 6 blocked kicks, which is top of the country. But Notre Dame, you got to play more games than us, so we beat you on average. Suck it, nerds. We get this win. Let us have this. And just looking, 4 of the blocked kicks came by our defensive backs unit. So if our D-backs were just their own team, they would be tied for 6th in the country in kicks blocked. Just our D-backs.
That's pretty wild.
On the special team side of the ball, we were able to fire off, get after the kickers, and make plays. And I mean, some of those plays were huge. Those essentially won us the Georgia Tech game and kept us in a lot of other games. So now we come to the part where we give out grades for the position groups. And I figure we'll do defensive backs as a whole before we shift gears into receiver. Yeah. Maybe Vince can get his tech stuff figured out and be able to jump back in and join us for the receiver part of the broadcast. We were able to get Jacob's input first, so we'll start off with him. Jacob, of course, not able to join us tonight. He's off in New York.
New York.
Concrete jungle, where dreams are made of. And with that, welcome back, Vincent Lococo. We are just about to give our grades.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, we
can hear you, Vince.
Okay. Just making sure.
Yeah, so we're just about to give our grades for the D-backs unit. So I was starting with Jacob, who isn't able to join us, and I feel like we're all going to be pretty consistent here.
Should we FaceTime him?
That would be funny. Just hold up a cell phone with his face on it. I filibustered his grade. I can't hold off any longer. He gave him a C-, and I'll jump in because that's what I gave them too. They weren't an elite run defense unit, but they were able to make some plays in the run game. I would have liked to have seen them be more consistent in the passing game.
Yeah.
And you see just all the bad stuff, all the bad stats, all the bad numbers that Matt brought up. But then you also look at some of the good they did, like leading the country in blocking kicks. You can't ignore that, even if it's technically special teams and not on the defensive side of the ball. But that's why they weren't in the D for me, and that's why I gave them a C- for my grade as well.
I mean, I did the same exact thing. Like you said, we were all in alignment here pretty much. I gave them a C-. That's what I gave them when I did my position group grades a few weeks back. I mean, for pretty much the similar reasons you gave. I mean, while they were able to, get a little bit better down the stretch, I think some of that was kind of a product of the teams they were facing. And there were just too many instances of when you face teams like SMU, Miami, a couple other teams in that they had too many lapses on the back end, whether they'd be the corners or the safeties, and allowed too many plays to be made. So while they weren't a complete and total failure, they definitely were not a successful overall unit in the secondary.
Yeah. Jacob didn't answer my FaceTime. So
that's sad.
I know.
Now explain your.
Whenever
grade,
he listens
Vince.
back to this, he's gonna be like, "Man, I wish I would have listened. I wish I would have picked up Vince's FaceTime. I feel like a jerk now. Right. What if he would have needed? What if he would have needed me? What if something was happening? It's okay though. My grade definitely is gonna be C-. I could go D range here, but I have to put some blame on the coaches, and them getting the calls into the guys late causes for the DBs to react to everything. Everybody gets everything late. Everything starts happening later than what it's supposed to be happening. So part of that, like what you all said, but also on the coaches as well, just getting everything in late. So,
yeah. And you're going to laugh because I'm about to sideswipe someone out of absolutely nowhere. The defensive back unit, I feel like, was a lot like Jack Plummer last season. You can win.
I can't do anything.
You can win with them back there, but we weren't going to win games because of them with the performances they gave this season. Which I feel bad, but it's the perfect comparison.
Yeah. This poor man stays catching strays, and he's not played in 2 years.
I'm sure this is still the background of a lot of the desktops there. It used to say, your film is your resume. So, we are entitled to discuss the resume.
So, yeah, and I feel like that's what keeps them out of the D range, which was the original point, was that they were good enough that we could still win with them. I mean, shit, we won 9 games. So it wasn't like they were abhorrent where, oh God, we're going to go 6-6 because of these guys.
But I think we definitely could have won 10 if they would have stepped up just a little bit. If they would have stepped all of our C grades up to like a C+, B-, we would have won 10 games.
They might have won 10 had they not just committed the worst string of clock management and plays string together at the end of the game that shall not be mentioned.
Yeah, I was thinking more Notre Dame, but if we're gonna go there, we can go there.
God, the fucking Stanford. Yeah. One of the 5 where they gave up 300+ passing, by the way.
Sick.
Which is wild, the Stanford game.
Yeah, we've got Cam Ward, Kevin Jennings, Riley Leonard, and Ashton Daniels.
No, it wasn't even like they only threw for like $150 the Notre Dame game. It was like Haynes right. King.
And, yeah.
Cam Ward, Jennings, SMU didn't need to pass for 300.
I was thinking more big plays versus Notre Dame. I feel like there were a lot more big plays. I don't know. I'm not PFF, nor do I really. I mean, like me and PFF, PFF looks at me and they're like, are we really going to take into account what this guy's saying? And I'm looking at PFF like, I mean, do you guys really even know the offense? So,
it's valid.
Yeah. You know what? Mark Schlereth gets paid to give NFL Takes 2, Vince. So that's your lane, baby. Man 101. Yeah. So to shift to what I think is going to be a bit more positive of a review, the wide receiver core. It was a weird year with this unit of guys. Like one of our big offseason acquisitions, Colin Lacey, gets injured in the offseason, rushes back, tries to play, guts it out a couple games, and then just shuts it down for the year. I think a lot of us thought that was going to be the end of the Colin Lacey chapter, so thrilled that we're going to get a chance to run it back with him. But I think it's also a year where we saw some guys step up. Like, he transferred out, but Blue Hicks, I think, was a pleasant surprise. Chris Hughes, absolutely huge. He and him step up. Chris Bell, of course, turning the page of going from a good to a great wide receiver. And, of course, Ja'Cory Brooks, who was absolutely phenomenal. One of the best wide receivers in the country. There were some pieces put out talking about, top graded players at XYZ positions. I am absolutely shocked that Ja'Cory Brooks not on that list, because I'm not going to say he single-handedly carried the Louisville offense, but man, he was one of the main pillars holding up the foundation.
He's going to be a phenomenal grab for whatever NFL. He won't be a day 1 guy. I don't even know if he'll be a day 2 guy, but he will be a phenomenal grab for a NFL roster somewhere.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's got who was the last receiver you would say had as much of a skill set as Brooks has? Because I would probably go as far as say Devontae probably, because I mean, Tutu was fantastic, but I mean, he was still small and he was mainly a speed guy, whereas Brooks is probably the most complete receiver that Louisville has had in a while.
Brooks runs significantly better routes than Tutu. I mean, it's like you take all the best qualities of Dez and Tutu and you put them together and you get Ja'Cory Brooks.
Ridiculously good. Like, it's hard to even come up with words. Like, you just, as you're talking about him, you go back and think of some of the plays that he made. Like, he made some sick grabs against Notre Dame. He was able to get open and make phenomenal plays downfield. What was the home game late in the season? He got interfered with and still reeled in like a one-handed snag.
Yeah.
Like, he was so good. And we talked about it during the season. Like, he's one of the few guys in Louisville program history where it's like, oh, he's covered in one-on-one, he's open.
It's the ability to go up and high point the football like that we haven't really seen of recent years. Like my memory, best guys I was around that did it was probably like Seth Dawkins, I would think. Somebody that can really just go up and snag a football out of the air. Just their hands are so big and just physical, and they just attack the football. I mean, he just did a great job of doing that. And I was a person who was kind of ragging based off pictures on how he was catching footballs at the beginning of the year. So made me eat my words, which I'm gladly, I will gladly do any day of the week. But yeah, the unique ability to go up and just snatch a football out of the air is you can coach that, but at the end of the day, it's kind of like a jump ball in basketball or a rebound in basketball. You have to really want to go get that football.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a reason that he was 20th in the nation in receiving yards per game at 84.5 yards per game. And also, the guy had a nose for the end zone, too. He scored 9 touchdowns. That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good year.
It's almost like former 5-star prospects can actually turn out to be good.
Wow, that's a concept.
Who'd have thunk it?
I just want to note, it's not me making the passive-aggressive remarks about recruiting this time.
Positive Keith.
Exactly. So
who says it has to be passive aggressive? I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, another player that really took some steps this year, Chris Bell. And I mean, he's a player that we've seen and we've always known, like, he's got the tools. It's just putting up together up here, not getting emotional in certain games, not letting players get under your skin. And he really just locked in this year and turned into a phenomenal player.
Yeah. I mean, there were still some like in-season progressions he had to make, because it's kind of like in that Notre Dame game, the devil on his shoulder was like, hey, you see that guy there? Punch him in the face. and then like as the season went on, like he started to actually like mentally lock in and just tune out all the noise and just focus on the main thing being the main thing. And as it turns out, he's pretty good receiver when he can actually mentally lock in.
I mean, at that point, he's given a crossroads, and it's like you can either go down this path or you can go down that path. And I mean, it's good to see that he went down the correct path and getting his head screwed on straight, because he's a hell of a ball player.
Yeah, and Vince, I can't help but think back to the last pro day when you and I are watching him just run routes on air, helping out Jack Plummer, and you and I were both like, damn, he looks like a lot more crisp, like running his routes than I remember him last season.
Yeah, he looked great.
And then he ended up just looking like that in spring ball. But of course, Ja'Cory kind of steals the show, and so does Colin Lacey, because those are like that's wide receiver 1 and 2 there,
exactly,
or at least that's who we thought we were. So in a way, Colin Lacey and his injury situation kind of allowed Chris Bell to be able to not only allowed Chris Bell to take the steps forward that he needed, but it in a way kind of forced him to. Because you didn't want it to turn into a situation in 23 where like it was Jamari Thrash and just a smattering of other guys who were like kind of up and down.
Yeah.
Like there had to be like another. It couldn't just be Brooks. As good as Brooks is, and Brooks is phenomenal, it couldn't be just him. And Chris Bell was able to give Tyler Shuck another like viable weapon in the past.
What I love the most out of this room in particular, and Keith, you'll love this. Blocking downfield.
Yes.
I mean, I talked about it all year. Matt talked about it. Keith talked about it. We all were hitting on it all year. These big runs are being sprung by not just the offensive line and blocking, but the wide receivers blocking downfield. That's how you really get these big long runs. So to be able to buy in and know that you'll get the ball more if you block. Every football coach will tell you that. You want the football more? Block. So I mean, shoot.
Simple as that.
kudos to those guys for buying in. That doesn't happen all the time.
No, it's I would go so far as to say it's pretty rare to get a receiving room as bought in as ours was last year to committing themselves to actually engaging and participating in the run game. Not just kind of, I'm going to trot and put my hands on, well, there you go. Like, these guys are getting
right,
after
and that
it.
stuff
like,
affects
hands in the
that
pass.
stuff affects the pass game. Them going out on these blocks they teach you to make everything look like a go, ready, like full speed ahead, or timing to pitter patter your feet off the line, whatever your route may be. But if you can make your blocking look like a route concept, like you're about to go run a route and confuse people, I mean, that's just one other dimension into the football game that can tweak everybody. I mean, I think about a guy like Travion Samuel back in the day, who you could clearly tell out on the field was going to be doing, run or pass, just based off of how he was going to be aligning in his stance. I'd look back at that Colin Lacey play where I was complaining about his stance. Like, that's a play right there where I'm like, it's so out of character for those guys to be looking like that, where I'm like, what the F is going on? So.
And then he snaps it off and makes a fantastic effort play to get it.
He said, hold on, hold your beer, let me do my thing. Yeah.
I will say this, while the room as a whole was certainly a little better than it was last year, I did kind of feel at times that the passing game was a little bit too, I don't want to say too reliant on Brooks and Bell. It's just that there wasn't really many other consistent options to go to. I mean, part of it's Colin Lacey having his injury thing, Amari Huggins, Jaden Thompson going out, Amari Huggins, Bruce coming in and kind of having to still get reused to everything after spending the majority of the offseason at South Carolina, which is and then Jimmy Callaway. And so, like, I kind of gathered the stats of the 600, Brooks and Bell combined for 671 yards after catch, which was 40.6 of the yak yards on the entire team. They combined for 25 contested catches, which is 59.5% of the team total. In fact, Brooks and Bell were combined for 25 contested catches on what PFF calls 38 contested targets. The rest of the team was 17 for 39. And then Brooks and Bell, when it comes to first downs via the passing game, they had 73 of them, which was 47.1. So literally half of the receiving offense when it came to keeping the passing offense on schedule was those two. So I would have liked to see someone else kind of step in a little bit more. But then again, I do admit that there is context of the fact that Jaden got hurt. Amari Huggins Bruce took about a month to like truly get used to the system, and his role was kind of like all over the place. Jimmy Callaway, I'm not sure what happened there.
Injuries at tight end too.
That too.
Game.
And, having two electric running backs, so we did not have to pass the ball nearly as much as I expected.
Well, that too.
Nobody saw that one coming.
Well, hey, they get to take credit for some of the run success there for busting ass in the run game, too. Like Chris Bell, one of the things I'm most excited about him coming back, he's a hell of a run blocker, man. He's got that chip on his shoulder, that attitude that as long as he keeps that wild stallion reined in and uses that like productively, kid can be a hell of a football player. I really hope that we can see him make that next step from a great wideout to an elite wideout next season.
As soon as he realizes he can just essentially power clean a corner to the ground, I think we'll see a lot more Chris Bell blocking excitement.
Are there any other miscellaneous thoughts, things before we go to the grades for the wide receiving core for the year?
I'm excited to see the Afros return next year. I'm a big fan of wide receiver room nicknames, as you know, with the Freaks and Coach Brew, and everybody loves the Afros.
So, like, I guess we could kind of parlay that real quick. I know we're going to have, like, further episodes later on down the line, so we don't have to have a too deep discussion right now. How do you think Deion Branch, like, getting that wide receivers coach, wheel route runner, getting that job will kind of impact that wide receiver room?
I mean, you're learning from a former Super Bowl MVP. Like, as long as he's able to coach and get the message across, I think we could see some phenomenal development of receivers, which, like, I'm I've been a little bit disappointed that some of the prospects we brought in didn't pan out. Like you mentioned Callaway, Clarkson, but also like Jaleel McClain. He didn't really come along. He was a highly touted guy. Didn't really come along like we thought. He transferred out this offseason. So I'm hoping that Coach Branch can get in and impart the knowledge he has into these young kids. And then hopefully we can keep him around a few years to watch them learn, grow, and develop. Because, I mean, he's a hell of a locker room guy already. Like, Coach Branch, like, hardly even meeting him. Just every time you seem to see him, he's got a great smile on his face and he's brightening whatever room he's in.
My thing, like I was around Colby Smith, who spent some time in the league, obviously not as decorated as Coach Branch. Coach Colby, if you're listening to that, I'm sorry. That is not an insult to you, because he would text me on that. But it's the vision and stuff that these guys have seen at this high level, being at their age. They're not older coaches. They're still younger coaches, can still like little bruh, like just like relate a lot more to the guys. I mean, I'm pretty sure a lot of them call Deion Unc anyways. Like, oh yeah. So it's the vision, being able to relate, being able to get things across in a different point of view that I'm super excited to have Deion do.
This is what I'm kind of looking forward to seeing what he can do the most. Of course, I want to see the impact that he has on guys like Colin Lacey, Chris Bell. If there's another impact portal guy that comes in, what he can do with them. I want to see if he can mold JoJo Stone into the receiver that he can be, because that cat is electric with the ball in his hands. It's just that before the ball is in his hands, that those kind of mechanics and like the actual like being a receiver part still needs to kind of get developed, because that was the main thing that I noticed on his high school tape. Like, dude was fantastic with the ball in his hands and getting yards after catch and going downfield. It's just that in terms of everything before that, it was still kind of up in the air.
So in a similar vein, I want to see what he can do with TJ McWilliams in an offseason, just because, like, I've talked about it before. The culture shock from going from a PJ Fleck, pound the rock, row the boat program into one where, like, yeah, we're a tough physical program. We're going to run the ball a lot, but you're going to get yours. We're going to actually throw the ball too.
Right.
Like, I'm excited to see what he can bring in, because I don't know if there's going to be another star wideout out there to get. I think we're pretty close to looking at the finished product of a roster.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to probably step in, be day one wide receiver 3. So let's see what you got, young man.
All right.
Do you think TJ McWilliams is going to be a wide receiver 3?
I mean, who else would it be? Chris Hughes?
Ha! Check, mate. Keith 1, Matt 0.
I mean, sorry, it just kind of caught me off guard. It's like I didn't know what to say. Like,
because Bobby Golden's going to be more of like a kick return specialist, I believe, and he'd be same role as. I
would take Golden over
Lacey.
McWilliams right now, because at least he has college.
Can JoJo
reps.
Stone not step into this wide receiver 3 spot?
He could. It just depends on how his development comes along.
Which, I mean,
spring ball can't get here fast enough, man. I'm so excited to see the guys again.
I am too. I want to see what Deion does with the young cats, like Matt mentioned. That's going to be an interesting thing. I mean, there's so much football knowledge in his head, and if these kids can just retain 1% of it, we'll be in a good spot.
Yeah. So with that, let's go ahead. We can talk a little bit more about some other stuff, but let's go ahead, put a bow on the wide receiver and the little skill segment for this portion of the episode. I jumped in first on grades last time, so I will defer. Vince, I'll let you take the reins first. You can take over. What's your grade for the wideouts?
I am going to give Ja'Cory Brooks an A, and everybody else gets a B-. I'm kidding. Which would be, just a B across the board if we're going to be, talking specifics. I thought it was a good year from this group. Like Matt said, you would have loved to seen another guy get sprinkled in there just for, shits and giggles almost, or to make it look prettier, or to add another weapon out there. But, I was fairly happy with these guys. It was definitely a big improvement from just having one option for what felt like the longest of times, even going back to whenever I was on the field or was watching, even back to then.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with a C+ just because Ja'Cory Brooks obviously great. Chris Bell, He finally took the step forward that we've been waiting for him to take. It's just that I didn't really see enough from everyone else in the room. Just like I said, part of that's just kind of the product of circumstance with injuries and all that other stuff. But still, I would have liked to see at least someone to kind of step up and take a more notable role.
So I hopped in, and Jacob also in line with us here. Jacob with a B. I'm giving him a B minus just because you saw that. I would say I'd give Ja'Cory Brooks an A, Chris Bell A minus, B plus, but I was also pleasantly surprised with like young fellas like Chris Hughes, the walk-on stepping up. How often do you see a wide receiver with the number 49?
Hey, my boy Spidey was 48 over there, one of the signalers back in 2021. Yeah.
So I was happy with just the receiving production of those guys, what they brought to the table. I thought, even though he's gone, Blue Hicks, I thought he really started to step in and play well, like as the year went on towards the end of the year. And then, like we talked about before, the run blocking, such an underrated aspect of that receiving core and something that they bought in and did well. I just thought they were too good in the run blocking game to deserve to be called just a C average unit. I thought
that's
B minus, I think that's a fair grade.
Yeah,
so
that's fair. Because they did do a better job in run blocking than expected. But, I mean, while that is, like, a part of their job, they're wide receivers. Their job is to catch the ball. And not enough people besides Brooks and Bell did it consistently enough.
With that, that's going to conclude the sort of season in review segment where we're talking about the little skill players. I know we sort of shifted a little bit into it about talking about Coach Branch, but man, there's been a lot of ongoings going on over the last few weeks, and I'm really excited to dive into the new content like once we get this season in review series wrapped up. But was there anything else really that jumped out with regards to the receiving staff or the DBs over the course of the year before we put a bow on this episode?
Jacob texted me back and said he's on the bathroom floor sick right now, so that's why I didn't answer the FaceTime. So, sorry, I didn't mean to hippa you right there, Jacob. Don't sue me.
T's and P's to Mr. Lane. Hop into those YouTube comments. Let us
know.
Our
guy's in New York right now, man. That's not good.
He's big leaguing us.
New York. So here's something I know it's kind of off the rails, but it still pertains to football. What do you think about the fact that spring ball could be shifted to a more NFL-style OTAs potentially next season?
I think that's great. I think spring ball is stupid as hell. As somebody that had 2 season-ending injuries during spring ball, the first week of spring ball, I think it is some of the dumbest shit ever. I think there are some pros to it with your early enrollees, getting them in a class schedule, getting them on a practice schedule, because your schedule, what we'll call it, Sunday to Saturday is essentially the same as it would be in season. So those kids do get acclimated a little bit better to what their schedule would be like for a full football season. But body-wise, injury-wise, like, hell yeah.
See, I never got hurt in spring ball, so maybe that's why I'm on the other side.
You still wish we did 2-a-days and 3-a-days and didn't have a face mask bar and everybody wore neck rolls.
Man, I wore a half cage for 3 years. I loved my face mask. But, like, not just because I'm the football boomer of the group, but also it sort of allows the team to really evaluate their talent better. Like, imagine if we didn't have a chance to see, like, Penny Boone on the field before the season came in, and it was just OTAs, and anybody can hop in and be a weight room warrior. If he comes out and we don't see him on the field, we don't evaluate that depth chart, he doesn't make a jump, and we have another, for lack of a better term, obstacle to clear before we get to Isaac and Duke. So I like the limited time of spring ball just because you're getting that on-field reps so you can actually better evaluate the players that you're bringing into your program.
Yeah, I mean, definitely pros and cons to it, just like there is just about everything in college athletics, but God, anything to protect the body is just a little bit more. We already play a shit ton of games if you make it all the way to the end.
Yeah, it's getting aggressive with the number of games total in the season, and now it's like, oh, let's make the playoffs 24
let's
teams.
Just do, March Madness, all 32 teams in the playoffs. And no.
Oh, now I assume you're referencing the piece from Brandon Marcello over at CBS Sports.
I can't read. I don't read articles.
Is this quote, now tell me, it's not attributed to any specific coach, but it does say an ACC head coach. If someone wants to leave after the spring and is tampered with, then I didn't want them anyhow. They will eventually quit on you at some point.
Okay, Dabo, you don't have to make it so obvious. Next time you want to quote something.
See, I think that's a Coach Brom sounding ass.
Really? That's fair.
He seems like an old school football hardo. I don't like the fact that you said Dabo, and I'm like, that could be Dabo too.
I mean, considering what he reportedly did when he found out what Penny and Tyler Barron's agent was doing, I mean,
yeah, that's why I'm like, that's a Coach Brom sounding ass quote.
Definitely. And it didn't mention anything about God, so it probably wasn't Dabo. So.
Oh, I love that. You know what? I think that's sealed it. I think it's Coach Brom there. Although I could also see Belichick, if they were going to hinder in the transfer portal and tamper, they were going to leave anyway.
He doesn't even know what the portal is.
He just got here. Well, last derail, and then we'll wrap this episode. You see the reports where his girlfriend's essentially worked her way into being his agent too?
That's great. Good for her.
What?
Oh, yeah. I think it was Pablo Torre who did some investigative journalism on that.
That is great for the North Carolina Retirement Center.
Hey, be nice to North Carolina. I'm still trying to get Chip Patterson to come on
I don't understand how they hire these 80, however old Belichick is, and what is he, 75, 80?
76, I'm pretty sure.
Okay, like, they hire him, but then they hire Aaron Matson, who is, like, 24, and, like, killing it as one of the youngest head coaches in the country.
I can't get over that they fired, oh God, why am I blanking on his name right now?
Sleepy Mac?
Yes, Mac Brown. They fire Mac Brown for Bill Belichick.
So the thing about boosters is they're fans just like you and me, but they have enough money to make what they want to happen. Let's take a look at another program the last couple of years.
Tennessee.
Yeah.
No, a very close program the last couple of years.
Yeah, that's fair.
All I'm going to say is if I hit it big in the lottery or something like that, I'm not going to do any of this crap. I'm just going to handpick a quarterback every year. I'm going to get something on the side of the stadium named after me, maybe a beer garden, maybe a concession stand. And I'll call it. I'll call it. I don't even need field passes. I just want to be able to, cut beer lines.
Get your number honored, not retired.
Yeah.
Like, come on, put me up. I want to see my LED number.
Just do what
Please.
Michigan did and say, yeah, that quarterback that's over there committed to LSU, yeah, I want him. Throw money at him.
Hell yeah. I would 100% do that for Louisville every year. Dan could be like, just call me and be like, all right, which quarterback do you want? And, I pick up the phone and I call Jeff, and me and Jeff are sitting here looking at film and, okay, all right, we want him. All right. How much? Figure it out.
Keith would be like, give me Jaden Rashada right now.
Future Louisville Sugar Daddy podcast.
Throw it all to Dylan Raiola. Throw it all. Give it all to him. I mean, could you imagine, though? Like, because one of these kids is going to be a bust. It could very well be the kid going to Michigan. Like, spending this buku amount. You say that, Matt, but let's not act like 5 stars and 4 stars aren't bust all the time.
Oh, I know.
Puma was a 4-star, Elite 11, X, Y, and Z quarterback, and turned out to be just good for us.
You know who else was an Elite 11 quarterback?
Who?
Devin Leary.
Exactly.
Yep. I thought you were going to go a much more spiteful direction. I'm proud of you taking the high road, Matt. And we're going to wrap this episode up.
Who are you talking about? We don't get to wrap episodes up with just leaving cliffhangers like that.
The algorithm.
Oh, Pierce. Pierce. Sorry, I couldn't see him.
The algorithm. I mean,
so before anyone else gets dragged through the mud, mainly me, for saying I want all these 5-star quarterbacks, even though I definitely do. We're going to wrap up. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of From the Pink Seats podcast. Again, subscribe to us. Follow us on your audio feeds if that's your preferred means of taking in the pod. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. Head on over to the socials. We've got State of Louisville on the Blue Sky now. We're getting ready to get that bad boy fired up. And as always, that's Matt McGavick, that's Vince Lococo, I'm producer Keith, and as always, go Cards.